Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Game Hub. I'm your host, Gamer K, and we are here at the final video of 2024. You know, this year has been a lot of ups and downs on me personally, and a lot of ups, kind of a couple lows, but I've been doing this for almost 6 years now. Professionally for almost 5, because at the start, I just saw this as a fun way to do geeky stuff and just voice my opinions out there on YouTube. Like so many people I've admired over the last over 15 years of watching YouTube videos and watching a whole bunch of amazing reviewers and more amazing reviewers as I've gone further. I never would have guessed, like, any of my videos would get any reactions at all. But the fact that over these years, 2 videos of mine have gotten over 1,000 views. And I know that's not a big thing, but as a cheap Canadian production, that's a huge thing for me. And I just wanted to start off by saying to all the people who have enjoyed my insanity, all my videos over the last good number of years, I just want to say thank you. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. And to end this year, I'm taking a page from last year's final video, where instead of, like I said, when there's a good video, a bad video of the same topic has to occur. So it is time to end this year with the absolute god-awful final bosses I've ever fought. A final boss in a video game is supposed to have challenge. It's supposed to test everything you've learned throughout the entirety of the game. And where some bosses revel in that and make the climax of the entire story feel earned and almost cinematic half the time. Because every boss fight I did on my good list last year was cinematic masterpieces. These, however, are bland, boring, absolute ridicule. But again, like I always say, just because it's a good boss doesn't make it a good villain. And just like a bad boss doesn't make them bad villains. But whether they're good or not, these boss fights were awful from the get-go. Now, obvious rules apply. 1 per series, games I've played, and I'm going to be ranking these ones on kind of a little bit of a different criteria from how my best final bosses were. Whereas how cinematic and how personal you feel with the final boss. Because the final boss is usually either a villain who's been a looming threat over the entirety of the game or the series, or just the fight itself is so jaw-droppingly beautiful in how it's programmed and how you play it and how you fight the boss. It makes you love it even more. Whereas a worse final boss, there are 3 components I'm looking for when judging these final bosses. 1, how much is the threat in the series, but at that final confrontation, it feels like it's a generic boss fight, or worse, a generic enemy in the game. And it doesn't give you that. It has the build up, but at the last minute of the boss fight, it falls flat on its face. 2, anytime a boss fight includes minor enemies in the final battle, it drastically It drastically eliminates the threat of this final boss. I mean, how tough are you if you have to constantly bring in other people to help you fight what should be a mano fight? 2, if sometimes the boss fight will feel with a threat that wasn't in the entirety of the game, but it's like that final monster that they just bring out of nowhere because it's colossal and it looks freaking cool. Yeah, like, all of these bosses are, or at worst, the final boss could have no real impact on the story whatsoever, has zero challenge to the overall fight. Well, thank you for joining me for this one, guys. Let's end this year merry and bright, and also, I can get you on the naughty list. So sit back, relax, and this is Gamer K's Top 13 Worst Final Bosses. And why top 13? Because here at the Game Hub, only the odd can be number 1. Let's get this shit list done so I can get ready for Christmas. A prime example of a threat throughout the series, the game, that doesn't have the full impact of what it could have been. Most of the time with video games that are based around a TV series, the game should feel like an entire set of episodes or an entire feature-length film of the series itself. So that feels as epic as the show was. And to its credit, the Ben 10 series does that really well. I'm pretty sure I talked about the Vilgax boss fight from Protector of Earth, the very first Ben 10 video game ever released, and it was great. It used everything we used about the aliens that we needed to use. Okay, to be fair, we only had Forearms, Heat Blast, Accelerate, Cannonbolt, and Wildvine, but still, it utilized every single part of their mechanics in order to defeat Vilgax in an amazing fight. Cosmic Destruction, on the other hand, did not. It felt more like just a button masher, just beating the heck out of these guys with kind of some gimmicky stuff about how to defeat them and everything. But the worst of it, the absolute worst of it, is the final boss, Evil Way Big. That's right. A giant evil way big is trying to destroy us. Now, keep in mind, because this is a final boss list, I will be discussing stuff about what happens near the end of the game. So, spoiler warning for the games I'm talking about. Just letting you guys know. The Evil Way Big had really good build up a little bit. Like, we saw bits of him working, Siphon working for him. Siphon obviously being that spineless lackey who kept serving Vilgax or, whoever was stronger. But then anyway, I'm not talking about the series. And when we finally get to the final battle, guys, so a part of the story is we were collecting parts of an ancient device called the Potus Altiari, which will enhance the Omnitrix's abilities. We had to destroy one part in order to save a friend, but luckily, after a cutscene boss fight with the Evil Way Big, we lose. It connects itself, it rebuilds itself, and then we get to turn into Way Big for the first time in a Ben 10 video game. And how does it... this is amazing. A giant Evil Way Big, an Evil Way Big, these aliens who look like kaiju-sized Actually, you know what? He is kaiju size of Ultraman, and you can also tell that with the way a Toku Star uses it's a blast beam. It's the same pose as. So I love the homage for the Ultraman fans for Ben 10. I love it. This should have been something so simplistic, considering the entirety of the game, the boss fights have been us mostly using our ultimate forms and using the special attacks from that. And we do get the special attacks. We get to fight him in a giant body of water. And we're just playing beat 'em up. So it's the same pose as the Ultraman at final attack, which is a cool homage to all those fans, to the Toku fans. This should have been something so simple. Giant Waybig, well, okay, Waybig's always giant. Waybig versus Evil Waybig, full abilities, giant body of water for a battle arena. What makes this boss fight so boring is that it's literally just spamming the special attacks. And the effed up part is we don't even get QTE moments, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, I don't think we do, because we had them throughout the entirety of the game. So why not use them for the final boss, where you switch between certain aliens and attack him with their different sizes, and then you go back to Waybig and get him once he's vulnerable. And the best thing is, you could have chosen from any of the aliens that you had in order for this. So, you could obviously replay the final boss numerous times and see what every single one does, like for their cool animations and everything. But it feels like a generic boss. There's no real impact. There's no real amazing moments, except for the final one where we blast Evil Waybig to the moon. And then it's revealed that it was Albedo who cultivated some DNA from a Toku Star. Yeah. This entire looming threat was Albedo. Let's be honest, we could have kind of seen it coming, considering the way he hated Ben Tennyson a little bit. So, yeah. It's one of those new villains who turns out to be a actual villain in disguise portion, and just the lack of impact, the build-up that they had for it was pretty good, but the entirety of the boss fight just felt so freaking short. So I mean, it's on the bottom of this list, but that's not saying a lot, considering pretty much everything going forward is god-awful. Hit the next one. Another one that really should have been a no-brainer, and also another one from a series that I love. Code Lyoko Quest for Infinity was one of my favorite Wii games growing up, and it was so much fun to play it. And then as I got older, I realized that there were a lot of technical issues with the game and everything. Fucking camera angle that you can't fix. But the worst of it is the final boss, where we finally decide to destroy Xana for good, and not like what we do in the show. We go to the really amazing volcano sector, and we defeat William with Ulrich, which is pretty badass. I'm not gonna lie. I always loved their rivalry during seasons 2 through 4. I loved it, but what I assumed was us fighting the Colossal like we should have We are instead intrigued to, out of the 5 bosses that we get in Code Lyoko, Quest for Infinity, one of them is pretty standard, one of them is really challenging, one of them is frustrating as heck, and one that is my absolute favorite, Desert Sector. Go look it up. The 5th and final is the magma worm. Yeah, it's this giant colossal worm that moves around. Also, it's in the center of a spot in the volcano pit where we have to jump on platforms in order to dodge and go around it. And for this one, you'd think that we would get a boss fight that would include everything, all the techniques that we've had to use throughout the other boss fights, using Yumi's levitation, using her multiple projectile fans, Ulrich's defending against laser attacks and his super sprint to get in close, Odd's time manipulation and his laser arrows, Aelita's aura ability, energy field, and have it all accumulate in an awesome boss fight. What I thought we were going to get with the Colossus, but it's a stupid magma worm that could look like any generic boss. It's poorly designed, having it be like this black coal looking worm with the Xana face in it, and it will keep spawning its faces as walkers, and you gotta destroy them, and then when the red one appears, you gotta damage it, because that's the main one. And then the damn thing digs its face into the ground, and all the these pustules of Xana's logo appear all over its body, so you'll have to go around it while shooting at it. Oh, and for this final boss, you only get Aelita and Odd. After we damage all the pustules, it grows back and grows arms where it will shoot at you with lasers. Yeah, I really don't have a lot to say for this boss fight. It's generic, it's boring. The fact that we don't use all 4 characters in this boss fight, and the fact that they didn't go with have the magma worm be the pre-final boss, and then the Colossus is there, and we finally get to brawl. But no. Again, it's lower on the list because it is a TV show video game, so I can't be too judgy about it. But everything going forward have no excuse whatsoever. Well, it's been a while since I talked about a Kirby game entry for a while, so let's do it. And it's coming from one of the more gimmicky games of all time, Squeak Squad. I really love this game. It's fun, it's enjoyable. It gave us the animal ability, which I love, and it's so cute. It's in terms of story, it's nowhere on the level of gravitas and eldritch horror that is Robobot or Return to Dreamland, or God, even Forgotten Land. But it's still fun. I mean, Kirby wants to eat strawberry cake. The Squeaks come in and steal the treasure chest, and then DDD interferes, Meta Knight interferes, and then an ancient threat is released and compensating the entirety of the leader of the Squeaks. Yeah, again, there's not that much lore. It is a DS game, so there's not that much story buildup or knowledge or lore. But what compensates is one of the lamest things I've ever seen. And that's terrifying. If you don't find all the treasure chests in the game, you will not get the final boss. And to have this be the final threat, so Darosh opens the final chest, that's been protected by DDD and Meta Knight, thinking it's the ultimate treasure, but it was an ancient evil that was sealed away and then compensates him, which gives us into a absolute great boss fight with Dark Darosh. Having his, not just amplifying the attacks he had in his previous boss fight, but having the bombs he makes create fire pillars, him shifting around the arena, having his rod send out an ice beam at us. It's just overall amazing. And then we defeat him, and then we get the true final fight in Dark Nebula. Now, all the Kirby bosses, final bosses of many, many games are amazing. We got Fecto Elfin. We got Queen Zectonia. We got Dreamstar. We've got Marx and his sadistic laugh. We got all of these amazing, amazing evil entities. And what do we get for Squeak Squad? A dark purple star with an eyeball. Yeah, after a small chase scene where we have to chase the star to this final arena, this is what we fucking get. Now, okay, the Dark Star. It was an amazing evil present. It was amazing evil that was sealed away. So maybe despite its appearance, its boss fight is somewhat enjoyable and challenging to what we've learned. No. Because after we defeat Darosh, we get his scepter to attack, where we will be sending stars at him. And his attacks are by far the lamest thing I've ever seen. Every single member of the Squeaks had a better boss fight than this joke of an evil threat. It will move shakily on the field trying to attack you. It will change colors for an elemental attack. It will either shoot fireballs at you. It will either use ice attacks, or it will use plasma electricity. And that's it. This great evil entity has 3 attacks. 4 if you include the moving around. It doesn't fuck around with the stage. It doesn't use any of the abilities. It doesn't change forms or anything. It doesn't even release minions to attack you. And a lot of the bosses coming up do that, why they're higher up. And once we defeat this evil presence, what do we get for it? Yeah, again, Squeak Squad's a personal favorite of mine ever since I was a kid, or a teenager, depending. Yeah, teenager, because that's when the DS came out. But aside, again, a bad final boss doesn't mean the game's bad. Seriously, play Squeak Squad. Enjoy it. I really hope they bring the Squeaks back for another series. I really do. Sequel. Predictable. Awful. I don't like bashing a lot of my favorite games. I really, really freaking don't. But it sometimes proves that just because a game does really well doesn't mean its sequels will. The fact I was looking forward to this game for so long. Epic Mickey 2. Yeah, like we didn't see the Mad Doctor was going to be the amazing twist. Really? Fucking really? Everything in this game felt so rushed. From the story elements to the gameplay to the boss fights and lack thereof. But after we reveal that the Mad Doctor was really the evil mastermind all along, so he can broadcast his show to the cartoon world where people the cartoons will remember him, and he can leave Wasteland. And the big final boss, while we had a grand spectacle with the Phantom Blot, okay, not really a boss fight, just we're inside of him and destroying his tendrils and everything. I still love it. Miles ahead of fighting the Mad Doctor and his fucking ride. This thing is annoying to fight against. It's just basically on a giant attraction with the Mad Doctor concealed and this robotic claw attacking us, pounding the ground, swiping at us, shooting thinner at us. And obviously it's that thing, whether you fill it up with thinner or paint, it doesn't really change much. It basically only changes the outro scene to the next final stage, where we finally fight the Doctor and his device, which is basically the snow globe thing with the tiki room mask that you have to paint in with spider legs, and it's pretty tough. I'm not gonna lie, it's really, really tough. The scenery is beautiful, having it be in a thinner pool with the animatronic pumps and everything. It literally looks great. It's great atmosphere. I'm not gonna lie. But what makes this boss fight really, really bad is the Mad Doctor himself. I mean, there's no real banter. I mean, any fifth grader with half a brain cell could figure out that he was going to be evil all along. And then, in a surprising turn, depending on your method of defeating him, the final is different. Where if you use thinner on the final boss, like the final part of the boss, he'll reveal his animatronic parts when Oswald tries to save him. We'll use thinner against him, but then his parts will malfunction and he'll fall into the thinner and be destroyed. However, if we've painted the masks to stop his machine all the time, Oswald will try to save him. He grabs Oswald, tries to take him. We use paint to fill in his cartoon paint, and he saves us. Proving that just because you do bad things doesn't mean you can't be redeemed. And the Guardians turn him back into a toon afterwards. After everything we did, we forgave him, and it's the much better ending. I'm still miffed that we got a teaser of what Epic Mickey 3 could have been, but unless someone decides to pick it up, we're left in the dark, and all we have to remember is this god-awful ride. Like, the build-up is meh, the atmosphere was great, the boss fight itself is kind of cut and paste a little bit for Epic Mickey standards. The fact that we got a choice really kind of makes it a meh. And then at the same time, yeah, it's still on the lower side of the worst list. But I promise you guys, going forward, everything is terrible in one way or another. So let's continue. Why is it? You know what? I'm not gonna sugarcoat anything. Mega Man Star Force 3, great final to the series. Really impressive with the storytelling. Proving that a kid's game doesn't have to be all cartoony and fun. No, it gets dark really, really fucking quick in the Mega Man Star Force series. Seriously. Praise it. And Mega Man Star Force 3 had, again, one of my lackluster villains, Mr. King, arrives again. And this is where we take part in the final section in Meteor G. This giant meteor of EM waves is going to destroy Earth. So we go in, we do some battling, we do some old boss fights, obviously, because it wouldn't be a Mega Man game without a boss gauntlet. Oh, wait a minute, they started doing the boss gauntlets in Mega Man Battle Network 3. And then not in number 4, 5, 6. So yeah, basically we're paying homage again. And we finally find Kelvin Stellar, Geo's father, after years. In all honesty, I'm kind of glad that we finally get some closure in that. Because after spending the first game seeing memories of him, and then in number 2, him being mentioned, it's good that we get old Kelvin back, and we finally get to see everything. And King merges with the data of Meteor G to become the Crimson Dragon. Not that Crimson Dragon. This thing, and its design is bad ass. This giant draconic creature that looks absolute evil, and I love it. I love this boss design. I like boss fight with the Crimson Dragon is tough. Its HP is huge. And one thing I love about it is that you can't, like, its head is blocking its core, so you can't hurt it right up front. You have to damage the head, and then it will split into 2 dragonic heads, which is badass. It will use claw swipe attacks. It will send missiles at you. It will do a rage burst down 2 panels, 2 panels, then the other 2 panels. And you can use everything in your arsenal to defeat this thing. It gets really challenging as the boss fight goes, and its attack patterns get a little bit faster. But then a surprise twist. I mean, once we defeat the thing, the story obviously shows it's still around, it's still kicking, it's stronger than we think it is. And it devours Kelvin Stellar. And then after being almost knocked out, Geo has a conscious talk with Ace. One of the best characters that ever graced the series. And I'm mad that Mega Man Star Force failed as an anime series, because I would have loved to see this guy in an anime. So whichever power up we had for the game, whether it's Red Joker or Black Ace, we transform into it. And then we see in the pixel that Geo gives a side glance to Crimson Dragon, and the final boss fight begins. This time, we're in permanent super form, and the dragon's HP goes up to 8,000, which I'm pretty sure is the highest HP of a Mega Man Battle Network and Star Force boss fight. It is the highest HP ever. And obviously, it's going to be difficult to defeat it. That's why after a couple turns go by, we get the ultimate move, either Red Gaia Eraser or Black End Galaxy. We use that final super move, and the boss fight ends in spectacular fashion. I have Black Ace, and I love that attack way more than the other one. It's just so cinematic, and literally, if you saw this attack in an anime, I swear to God, you would lose your mind. But again, I'm praising it so much. So why is it a bad boss fight? Or a worse final boss? Because The Crimson Dragon kind of comes out of nowhere because King merges with it. It would have been better. I mean, I love the dragon design. Like, if this was in any other video game, it would have been spectacular. It just doesn't fit with this whole aesthetic. I mean, we thought an ancient weapon, an ancient god, dragon. It doesn't make sense. I mean, what would have made more sense is if, with the accumulative power of Meteor G and all the noise that King has collected because of his crimes, imagine if he EM wave changed with the Crimson and itself, and he becomes Crimson King. I mean, come on! It's right there, guys. It was right freaking there. Crimson King. Or King Crimson. Because every other boss fight had the motif of a deck of cards. We had Spade Magnus, Diamond Ace, Club Strong, Jack Corbus, Queen Virgo, Dread Joker, Ace and Ace. All that was missing was King. And you botched it. What the hell, guys? Like, imagine, the boss fight didn't have to be anything grand at first. Like, imagine if our first boss fight is with King Crimson, and his attack patterns are way better. And then after we defeat him, we think it's over, because his HP would have been really, really high. We'd have to use a lot of our techniques and a lot of our strategies. And then after King realizes that he's lost and everything, the noise and the energy and the negativity of Meteor G then grabs him and swallows him up and assimilates him, and then we get the Crimson Dragon. Having King just merge with it immediately and it comes out as Crimson Dragon, it feels like it doesn't connect. A lot of bosses in video games need to feel like just by looking at it, you can tell that this thing belongs. For example, again, I know I'm rambling on about this a lot, but I need to do it. Mega Man Star Force 1, they were all constellations. Mega Man Star Force 2, they were all ancient mythical creatures, and Limu is basically this giant golem-like god, which fits the motif. Every other boss in Mega Man Star Force has that playing card theme because of the suits and the face cards, but we're missing the king. But we get dragon. See where I'm going with this? It doesn't fit. Like, if you put all the if you did a whole panel artwork of all the boss fights in each game, you could clearly see which ones belong together. But then you get to the number 3 and you're like, why is there a dragon here? Like, it doesn't fit. So, it's a great boss fight, but again, I'm breaking my rule a bit because it is a good boss fight. It's just bad because it just doesn't belong. It's one of those boss fights that don't belong in the video game after a long period of time, and you've seen the work that's already been in there. But I babbed on along enough about Mega Man Star Force again, so let's get on to it. I know my one friend is gonna hate me for this. Well, taking a page from Josh Scorcher, 358 days. Nope. But before you Kingdom Hearts fans start typing in, you're putting Xion on a worst final boss list? How rude of you. It's a great boss fight. Oh my god. No, actually, it's not Xion. That boss fight was beautiful. It was perfection. But sadly, it's not where we end. Yeah. How is it one of the coolest characters in Kingdom Hearts gets the suckiest of final bosses. And I am, of course, talking about the boss fight with Riku at Memory Skyscraper. What were they thinking? No, seriously. What were they thinking? We had just had a emotional, multi-final phase like Kingdom Hearts is known for. Epic boss fight that literally makes me cry all the time with Xion. And then we had to go and fucking ruin it with Riku. Dude, the boss fight is lame. There's no scale to it. There's no grand moments. I'm dumbfounded that this is even a thing. And again, I'm not faking this. This is 100% real shock. I don't script my videos. This is 100% real. How could they have an amazing grand like that with Xion, and then we get this shit with Riku, where it's just mano a mano? Yeah, we get our twin blades and everything, but at the same time, it doesn't work. It's boring. It feels like a generic boss fight. And what it does, because it's so lame, I don't have a lot of notes on it. There are just two big things that this boss fight really does terribly. One, that special scene that we get at the end of Kingdom Hearts 1 with Roxas and Riku fighting on the skyscraper, and all the cutscenes we see about it in Kingdom Hearts 2. It would have been good if, after the entirety of this, while we trail through the city that never was, we just fight Neo Shadows. That's what the final should have been. A swarm of Neo Shadows where we finally get to bust out the Oath Keeper and the Oblivion and just go to frickin' town. And then we get the amazing long-ass cutscene of Riku versus Roxas. I mean, it showcased it. I mean, again, the cutscenes from number 2 kind of showcase what happened, but we didn't get to see how it happened or how Riku awakened the darkness that made him look like Ansem Seeker of Darkness. But to have it as a boss fight? And then after we defeat him, there's nothing great. We just get the cutscene of the banter back and forth. And okay, if you did play the DS game, on the bottom screen after this fight, we see the memories of Xion fading from Roxas's mind, that she's finally being removed from his mind and going back to Sora. It's a beautiful and heart-wrenching moment in an absolute amazing scene of him and Riku bantering back and forth. And then having Riku take off his blindfold and then release the darkness. And takes him out in the pussiest of ways. Just by having Guardian grab him and crush him until he loses consciousness? Are you out of your fucking mind? It could have been like an epic boss. Like, that should have been the fucking boss fight. We got a cutscene of Riku and Roxas going at it, and then he becomes Seeker of Darkness. And that's when the boss fight comes down, because we defeat him, but then Guardian surprises us, and then we are knocked out. Why am I coming up with better boss fights than what Square Enix did? This is terrifying, guys. But yeah, Riku, great character, wasted in 358 Days, wasted in Kingdom Hearts 3. Man, Riku really is getting the short end of the stick here. Are we ever going to get a game just with him? Besides those... Well, I've been dreading this moment for a good while. It's time to face the music with No Straight Roads. One of the only indie games I've ever owned, and definitely one of the coolest ones I've ever played. A revolution of rock and roll against EDM music in a city that starved for energy, and two best friends who have a band together try to fight the establishment. Okay, why wasn't a verse of We're Not Gonna Take It from Twisted Sister not played during this game? I love it. I love the art style. I love the boss fights. Everything in this game is great. Except for Tatiana, aka the final boss. Ish. After finally getting up to her giant-ass tower, and after falling through it, from a glitch that happened, can't remember how that happened, Tatiana basically gives a whole full of philosophical BS on us that actually reigns true. The whole game makes us emphasize with Zook and Mayday because, they prove that their energy output is pretty badass, and the city is starved, and EDM can't constantly maintain the needs of the city. But they did a revolution, but it was more of an anarchist revolution a little bit. And like Tatiana said, whenever Mayday kind of says that what they were doing is wrong, Tatiana gives some straight facts. That she only eliminated them from the competition because they were, when the artists didn't like their performance, they revolted. And Tatiana basically banned them mostly, again, their output was great, but their attitude was, entitled a little bit, thinking rock was better. Which, to be fair, it is, but I'm taking a while to get to the boss fight, but I'm setting the stage. Tatiana also says that their entire revolution was, quote, all flash. It may have got people's attention, but it was all show afterward. And you didn't legitimately beat her EDM artists. We hijacked their concerts and basically beat them without a fair competition. And honestly, I agree with this. Throughout the game, I'm seeing the boss fights, and they're all unique. They're all really good. And like Tatiana said, what Zook and Mayday were basically doing was no better than what NSR was doing, imposing what they like as music upon the entire city with no real conversation about it. They just made everyone like rock and roll with their antics and their hijacking the artist's concerts and amazing boss fights. And again, more facts. Tatiana comments that, did they ever think of the consequences of what they were doing? How many NSR employees would be put out of business? Or what about the people who actually like EDM and all you're doing is just doing what you said we did and imposing what you like on everyone? This is a definite showcase on how an idea can be great, but if it doesn't have a fully realized purpose, like, if it's just a heat of the moments don't really work. And this is a good example of why she's not a terrible villain. I mean, I wish we'd gotten better. I mean, again, I like her design. I like her personality. Like, again, great villain. That was actually correct. Her boss fight, on the other hand, gets away from us. While the other NSR bosses had different takes on EDM, from disco to digital Vocaloid to classic piano to boy bands, And then to alternative with this Lady Gaga looking character. Tatiana doesn't have any of that. She stands up high on her pedestal while we fight a clock. A giant glowing orb that we have to attack numerous times. Okay. And then Tatiana gets down and we see her face starting to crack. Literally. Seriously, if we get a close-up of Tatiana's face after the boss fight of where her face is cracked, she's starting to look like the villain from Catwoman. But yeah, cool. But yeah, Tatiana breaks out the clock hand blades. Okay, seriously, why is her boss motif a clock? I never thought of that. If that is that, huh? You know what? That is actually really insightful. That is actually helpful. But then at the end of the boss fight, we find something that's mentioned a little bit in the game, but again, because the game has this kind of not real open world lore building, we know a little about this. We find Cool Fyra's guitar. And it's revealed Tatiana was Cool Fyra, the rock legend that Mayday loved. And she basically said that her bandmates split up. There was no direction. Everyone was doing what they wanted, and that's what led her to EDM and trying to have a structured society. Also, the final boss of this isn't really the final. There's one more segment after this, but it's not really a boss fight, so I consider this the final boss of the game. And what happens next comes right out of left field, and I'd rather talk about that in another video later on, because I don't have time for this. Tatiana, great example of good villain, terrible boss fight. Yeah, I can't in good conscience let this go untalked about. The Koopa King, ladies and gentlemen. Bowser himself has been the final boss of primarily every single game of Mario, with the exception of 2 Luigi's Mansion games, which is good. But if I'm going to talk about the Koopa King's biggest disaster, 2 things really come to mind when I think of Bowser, final boss, and terrible. One is Super Mario Sunshine, where we just super ground pound the stars of his hot tub. No, I'm not even joking. That's legitimate. Or do I talk about the one I actually played, and what is it with sequels and giving us the worst? Because 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Super Mario Galaxy 2. What the fuck did you do? It's the same generic thing. Like, Final Bowser, amazing atmosphere for the final boss. We get there, and it's basically everything that he's done to us. Small planet orb. Bowser's floating around. He uses his fist to punch, creating the punch us, which later on would send purple shockwaves down the planet. And then he'll call down meteors that get stuck. We jump on them when he punches for the gravity, and then we ground pound the meteors into his dumb fucking face. Do this enough times and we win. However, Bowser's not giving up this easily. He eats the Grand Star and becomes supermassive, leading into a giant black hole with one of the worst things ever. Bowser shoots fire, and charges up a punch towards us. But we have an abundance of those frickin' meteors where we ground pound them into him. And he'll spin in his shell to try to avoid us a little bit, so we gotta wait. Do the ground pound literally 3-4 times, and we win, and Bowser falls into a black hole. Why is it Bowser is more structurally sound than anything else that falls into a black hole? Again, this entry is really short because it's Bowser. He's returning. He's not destroyed. But the fact that this is an amazing sequel to an amazing premise, and this is what we get? You couldn't have Bowser Jr. intercept or anything? God. We're almost done this list. Next. We're going to the very start of a story all about vengeance. And what I mean by that is I don't mean the first game. I mean a prequel game that takes place before the events of the main game. God of War Ascension. This is a prized item in my collection for years, and it is one of the best prequel games I've ever played. And the fact that we have to the entire game is basically set in one location, but throughout flashbacks, we play through the story that led up to this moment, which is great writing in and of itself. But this story is basically the catalyst that makes Kratos goes off for vengeance against Ares for the first game is breathtaking. The boss fights in this game either go from monstrously amazing to simply interesting to, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to sugarcoat it anymore. The final bosses, Alecto and Tisiphone, the final of the three Furies, are absolutely dreadful. First off, I do this a lot because I can't believe how dumb this is. Alecto, the Queen of the Furies, and her sister Tisiphone have been a thorn in our side the entirety of the game. The three Furies basically working as oath keepers. Basically, if someone breaks an oath with a god, they go and imprison them in Hecatonchirus, a giant, 1,000-armed giant that was made into a prison. If you guys thought the Kronos boss fight was massive, an entire level is a giant. And primarily where the whole game takes place, which is beautiful. It's amazing. But a couple things lag it a little bit. For example, the fact that we don't fight all three of the fates of the Furies at once. Mostly because at the start of the game we get rid of Megara or Megara, whichever. No, not that Megara. I refuse to say that. So Megara. And again, the Furies are amazingly designed, but their the final boss fight is awful. We have Tisiphone with her giant glowing phoenix bird thing, which is she's been taunting us with illusions the entirety of the series, where I'm glad that we get to beat her down, but she helps her sister throughout the boss fight by attacking us and by having her pet attack us too. And then Alecto morphs into her true form, a giant squid. Really? But all honesty, having that and filling her chamber with water and then giving us a really, really sick QTE segment of grinding on her tentacles and jumping forth and cutting them out is really awesome. And I'm glad that he didn't have an underwater segment. It was just for a cutscene where we get to see the shadow of her in the water. It's terrifying. It is absolutely terrifying. And one of the reasons as a kid, you definitely don't want to go in any dark water. But then we're on a boat. And then later on, she's out of the water and we're fighting her. But as amazing as this boss fight is, and even though Tisiphone is helping a little bit, the biggest sin in this boss fight is the fact that they send generic soldiers to attack us while she stands in the background doing almost nothing other than screeching and tentacle slamming. But luckily we get to bring a tentacle right into her goddamn face, and then we end the Furies for good. Great game, great atmosphere, great villains, but the boss fight, again, it feels too cluttered for a final boss. A lot's going on. They use generic enemies. So yeah, the final two Furies, the Fury was out of them before the fight even began. God damn it. Once again, a sequel gives us a great build-up. Actually, no. This sequel actually gave us a new story, new threats, great build-up. But again, I can't say a lot of negative things about the Assassin's Creed earlier days. And if you guys know what I'm talking about the Pope himself, the Spaniard, Rodrigo Borgia. This guy was a looming threat since the start of the game. Even before we became a full-fledged assassin. He was there at the execution. He was there at the Pazzi conspiracy. He was there he was there when we first encountered him. He was there in Venezia. The Borgia is a villain that makes it necessary that he is involved in every single plan. And I love that. He's a head honcho who doesn't just sit back and let his cohorts fuck things up like another Assassin's Creed villain that I like a little bit, but at the same time realizing, yeah, he does nothing. And Rodrigo gets away from us every step. When we were in Tuscany, he gets away. He gets away when he's in Venice. When we track him down for the second final chapter, except he doesn't appear in the 2 DLCs, which I'm happy about. And after finding out he becomes Pope years later, we are heading to the Vatican to end his reign. Which I'm glad it isn't a one-shot final assassination. We get an amazing boss fight where Ezio uses the apple and pulls an Al-Mualim. What would happen to us in the first game, we get to use by splitting into 5 different Ezios. And a great boss fight with Rodrigo with his papal staff. Having to counter and dodge. Having 5 Ezios attacking him. Again, Assassin's Creed 2 didn't have the best combat system, but it was a step above number 1. So it's great in that aspect. And then he gets the better of us and we head into the vault. Where we get a mano at a closed gate, at a closed door. And then Ezio pulls this bullshit. No more running, no more ancient artifacts, no more weapons. Let's see what you have, old man. As ridiculous as this whole thing is, Ezio sang it with such swagger, and it's a great moment of him just saying no more weapons. Let's see what you have, old man. 20 years Ezio has been going after Rodrigo after what he's done to his family. What he did. That was the catalyst that created this scenario story. You can tell in the voice, in Ezio's voice, that after for so long. And even when we first assassinated Rodrigo, he keeps thinking that he thought he was better than this, but he's not. But after that calm reflection where he hesitated, I give huge credit to Roger Craig Smith. His voice lines with Ezio are some of the best in Assassin's Creed. And then we get the boss fight, and it's a fist fight. My sentiments exactly. Yeah. Or, yeah. How could a 20-year build-up? I mean, I know it didn't feel like 20 years, but how could this literally be the final for Assassin's Creed 2? A fist fight with Rodrigo Borgia, the Pope, in an ancient vault as he's waxing philosophical about God being in the vault and basically being a start of the Templars' Dark Ages, where the Grand Master wasn't seeking glory for the Templar Order, but for himself. I guess power-hungry idiots are a part of the Borgia family. And then after we literally beat him, and we have to press button mash to choke him, but we don't frickin' kill him. We let him live. Gee, you think it's gonna come back to bite us in the ass later? It does. This is another prime example of a great boss fight, great setup, great build-up. I mean, the first half of the boss fight is great. 5 Ezios, ancient artifact, us combating him with the papal staff. But then we get a fist fight. It's like if Batman versus Superman, they're using all their gadgets, all their abilities, going mano a mano for the first 3 minutes of the fight, and then the next 10 minutes, it's just them doing... You know what? Play the clip. Yeah, that's exactly how it felt. And we got 3 more. We got 3 more here to go, so let's do it. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I'm done sugarcoating these top 3. There is no excuse how some of these can be so awful. In a game where impressive and creative boss fights and that make you think are enjoyable, this is a final boss fight that has been on so many terrible lists that it's not even funny anymore. Despite us being in a circus, I'm sick of the clowning around. Wait a minute. Is this the number 2 section or the number 3? Oh. Cue the music. Yeah, if you guys know that music, you know exactly where this is going. The final of Psychonauts 1 is one of the most laughed at, talked about, and criticized levels in all of gaming. The Meat Circus being freaking small as shit, not having a lot, and the boss fight being the absolute lamest thing ever constructed. The Giant Butcher alone is awful. It is just stupid of how unfun or how uninteresting it is compared to all the other bosses in the game. Like I said with Mega Man Star Force, if you put all these bosses together and say which one doesn't feel like it belongs, Okay, to be fair, no Psychonauts boss list actually looks like they go together or anything. But this one is the worst. It's the giant butcher, the giant manifestation of Oleander's father. And he swings his cleavers at us, we guard, we dodge, and then we just beat him up. And then we get the small section of Raz's father being implemented because these are the two minds melding together. And it's not much of a boss fight as it is a trial run of all of our acrobatic skills. So if you have not mastered them half the time like I did, you're going to be suffering a lot like I did. And then at the end of it, the two fathers meld together in this two-headed dad monster, which it sucks. We use our psi abilities that are enhanced by Raz's father. Yeah, I didn't think psychic abilities could be transferred and made stronger to create the giant manifestation of Raz to beat up the dad monster, but it needs to recharge. So the boss fight accumulates to us beating up the twin-headed dad, shrinking back, and having to wait to recharge, so we're dodging attacks most of the time. That's not fun. I don't want a boss fight where I'm forced to cower. I mean, if I run out of bullets or abilities and everything, then yeah, I'll run for my goddamn life. But the fact that this is an actual mechanic for it, instead of us having the ultimate psi ability right from the start and go to mano a mano, we are forced to run and dodge, which makes it worse. Psychonauts 1, you definitely did a lot of things right. You definitely paved the way for Psychonauts 2. And let's just think of the meat circus as a whole bad dream. I talked about this in my lackluster bosses, and yeah, Nasty Nork again from Spyro the Dragon. I'm going to make this very brief because I've already talked about this one a lot, but what makes him a worse final boss is everything I've stated. He's not even in the plot outside of the opening cutscene. We never see him. He's never mentioned. He's mentioned by the dragons we free, but in the story, we don't see him. He's not present. He does nothing in cutscenes. He's just evil because we mocked him. And the final boss is awful. We chase him around his long lap. Like I said, they made that trophy for the reignited trilogy, where we have to run that lap 5 times. And then his final boss, and then we flame him. He runs through the obstacle course of the platforms that are slowly going. And then first off, we have to chase after egg thieves that have the keys that lower the steps for us. So there's that first. And then we don't even get a boss fight. This is just an overly complicated chase scene. No. How about no chase scene once in a while? So yeah, this number 2 is going to be short. I swear to God. Nasty Nork has nothing of being a great boss, nothing about being a great villain, a great threat. It is literally one of the lamest boss. I mean, to be fair, back then, gaming wasn't really as scripted as anything. And Ripto's Rage and Year of the Dragon really built up. So I can't hate it too long. Sometimes you gotta shovel shit in order to get a couple roses. And Nasty Nork is definitely the shit of the Spyro series. Sadly, a couple others come to mind when it comes to shit. But at the same time, yeah. 15 years ago, one of the greatest video game starts happened. It was a game that revolutionized a genre. It gave nostalgic fans of a certain series the game that we wanted, that brought us into the madhouse. Arkham Asylum is and always will be the stepping stone of what revamped superhero games that did not require them to use the movies that they were based on to create a great story. They were able to be dark, they were able to be gritty, they were able to make you feel like you are in the suit of the hero. And it's a shame that in the legacy starting outing of an amazing story with characters that we love in different versions that made us all scared, atmosphere that gave us chills, moments and sounds that gave grown adults the shivers, all accumulated into what many can be dubbed as the biggest middle finger ever. Titan Joker. This thing has been talked about on other channels for years now. Like I said, 15 years since Arkham Asylum. And the jokes aren't done. Sorry, funny man. This is all on you and your stupidity. And if you guys want an interpretation of what could have made it work, go watch Josh Scorcher's Disappointing Bosses list. Because he really gives a good idea of what could have happened if the structure for Arkham Asylum and going forward was, if the Titan Joker was handled in a different way. But in this is literally, okay, to be fair, story-wise, I don't mind it. I mean, yeah, Joker does something stupid and creates himself into this giant monster, which is awful. But then after realizing it, Joker was the cause of his own demise. Because the toxin of Titan definitely interacted with the chemicals that were already in the clown's body, that's what made him sick. That's what killed him. So I love that they incorporated that into the whole story of after he shoots him and he gets the cure, the chemicals already did damage on the inside. So again, I give props to that story-wise, but boss-wise, this is boring because we get 3 bosses in Arkham Asylum. Okay, 5 if you include all 3 Scarecrows as one, and if you include Killer Croc as one, which we do. But the final boss against Titan Joker, yes, I like that it is on top of the one building that you never go into unless you go in once in a while in the visitors area to listen to Joker's constant comments with his TV head. So again, I like that every single room, every single building in this game is used in one way or another. Nothing's out of place, nothing's ignored. But here's my problem. If Joker planned for there to be a great boss fight in the back room, why was there a giant display of Joker's face on the floor of the roof of the patient interview area or visitors wing, whichever? Yeah, because he wasn't planning on shooting himself up with Titan. The whole plan was for Batman to change. And it could have been good. But Joker, what the hell? You claw swipe at us for a bit, and then you go to the top, and then you sick your goons on us while you throw explosives? Okay, to be fair, getting down and dirty half the time really isn't Joker's style, so even if he is this giant monstrosity, he's still Joker. But then you turn to the camera helicopter, and we can ultra back claw his back and bring him down and punch him. And he does it again, twice. Do this 3 times and he gets electrocuted. He breaks the wooden flooring. And that's the end. Titan Joker is the worst final boss ever. Because the rest of the game, the buildup of it is great. Because throughout the game, we only run into Joker 3 times in this main game, in the game before we actually fight him. Right at the beginning when he escapes, with the first Titan fight, and then in the Botanical Garden. So throughout the majority of the game, we only hear Jokers through the PA system and all the giant TV monitors. We don't actually see Joker all the time. So it's because, yeah, he's a coward. He's not going to go Batman toe-to-toe half the time. It works for Joker's personality and showmanship, but this Titan is just the most awful-looking thing you can imagine, and he's stupid. He knows Batman bat-clawed him the first time, so why would he get to... he's not Clayface. Why would he get distracted by the helicopter? It makes no sense, either gameplay-wise or with Joker's character. I mean, he's not stupid. He's not a cartoon villain who's gonna hold on to the bomb that's lit the fuse until it blows up in his face. So yeah, all of that combined with the fact that the boss fight is boring, it's idiotic. He uses his goons, which again, for Joker, it does work. But at the same time, the rest of the boss fight, he's just a big overgrown idiot that claw swipes and then gives up. We don't even counter him. We don't jump over him and get a couple hits in. He just gives up. And all I can say is afterwards, we got so much better in terms of the boss fights with the Arkham series after Asylum. So it only makes sense that the worst of the worst ends up in a madhouse. And that's my final boss, my final worst final bosses list of video games. I hope you guys enjoyed the list. What do you guys think of my list? I know I rambled along about certain entries and everything. Next year, I will definitely get better of trimming down some of the fat and information for the lists for top 13s. And 2024 is now coming to officially over. I'll see you guys next year in 2025, where my videos are... I got a couple new ideas for videos coming up next year. I got some old ones that still need to be done. So, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all from the Game Hub. And join me next year, ladies and gentlemen, where January starts off. And it's an anniversary of a sort. And to do it, I'm not done with villains yet. I'm going to be revamping one of my very first lists on the Game Hub. Starting next year. This is Gamer K, logging out.